In today's episode, we will discuss the water coaster turned launch coaster that's been thrilling guests at Silver Dollar City for over 20 years. Welcome to Airtime Traveler. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Roller Coaster History Podcast. You are listening to Airtime Traveler. My name is Nathan Grace, and I'm joined by my wife and lovely co-host.
Hi, I'm Haley, and I'm Nathan's wife and co-host.
And we're so excited for you guys thank you so much for tuning in to the very first episode. We hope this will be the first of many to come. Just to kind of give you a brief introduction to why we're starting this podcast. So, I am a roller coaster enthusiast. It's kind of been something I've been interested in for a long time. I started by playing Roller Coaster Tycoon when I was a kid, and even though... So just quick story. So, I started playing Roller Coaster Tycoon when I was younger, and we lived pretty close to Silver Dollar City. And I loved going to Silver Dollar City and watching the roller coasters, but I was absolutely terrified and would not ride anything. I was telling my mom the story a couple weeks ago. I went on this tiny roller coaster. It was called the Runaway Ore Cart. I'm not sure if it was who manufactured it or anything like that, but it used to be this tiny little kiddie coaster that was at Silver Dollar City. And I remember riding it when I was a little kid. And I was sitting next to my dad, and it was one of those that it would go around, 3 times. And I remember sitting on the coaster, like grabbing my dad's shirt. After we went around the first time, I was just like, in my head, I was like, 2 more times. Like, I just was terrified of roller coasters, but I loved watching them, and I loved playing the Roller Coaster Tycoon games. And that was until I was a teenager, when I was in high school. And one year for prom, me and a few friends, we decided to go to Silver Dollar City. And at this point, I still had not rode any of the big coasters there. I'd rode Thunderation, which is an aero mine train, but that was it. I hadn't rode anything else. And it was the year after Outlaw Run had been built. And when we got to the park, my friends wanted to, the first thing they wanted to do was go ride Outlaw Run. And I don't know what I thought I was going to do all day with my friends at Silver Dollar City without riding the roller coasters. I don't know if I was just going to sit there and just watch them, but I eventually decided that I guess they convinced me to get on Outlaw Run. I don't know how, but eventually I rode Outlaw Run, and I actually enjoyed it. So, that day, I rode the rest of at that time, there was Powder Keg, Wildfire, and I think that was all the big coasters at the time. So I rode all 3 of those that day, and ever since then, I've really enjoyed riding roller coasters. So, and it's become a hobby of mine to go explore new parks, and so I just went to Knott's Berry Farm for the first time a couple weeks ago. We'll talk more about, Knott's Berry Farm at some point, but so that's my story. And then Haley, my wife, she kind of will represent, so in the industry, so for you guys that don't know, Haley is not nearly as much of an enthusiast as I am.
No.
And
I love them. I love going on them. And I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where Kennywood was my home park. And I love going on roller coasters, always have, unlike my husband, who was kind of a scaredy cat when he was younger.
That's true.
That's okay. But yeah, I love roller coasters, but I don't know anything about them, so this should be interesting for me.
So kind of, she's going to represent the GP in this podcast. In the industry, we've referred to GP as the general public. So anybody that's not overly obsessed with roller coasters like I am.
So not a roller coaster dork like you.
Yes, exactly. It's pretty much, so when we talk about a roller coaster that's good for the GP, might be roller coaster that an enthusiast like me might find kind of like, I've rode something like that at another park. But the park might put it in because they recognize that for the everyday person, they may have never rode a roller coaster like that before, even though there's one at Six Flags in St. Louis or whatever. But, that's what we refer to as the GP. So you are the GP in this podcast, and I am the enthusiast. So Haley's got her notebook. She's gonna, she might have questions, and we're just gonna get into it. So
I wanted to let you know I looked it up, and the manufacturer of the ore cart.
Oh, the runaway ore cart.
I looked it up for you. It's Molina and Sons.
Oh,
so,
okay.
That's
your input.
That's my input for tonight. It's my history input.
She's on RCDB. She's even got the official source
I looked
out.
it up on Google.
That's impressive. That's a good website.
General public input
There's
for tonight.
There's your GP input for the night. Perfect. All right. Well, so we're going to be talking today about Powder Keg at Silver Dollar City in Branson. So this podcast, wanted to start it because I was looking for a podcast that would tell the stories of individual roller coasters. There's lots of podcasts that tell the stories of coasters that are defunct, or maybe the stories of amusement parks. But I couldn't really find a podcast or even a YouTube channel that did deep dives into the history of individual roller coasters. There's a few that get a lot of videos, like the really popular roller coasters are the ones that have a really crazy backstory or, had some major incident or something like that. But there wasn't really anything for just normal run-of-the-mill coasters that are still popular, but, like a Powder Keg, for example. I couldn't find anything that was here's a deep dive into the history of Powder Keg. And so I wanted to, I've been thinking about this idea for a while about doing a podcast that would dive into the history of these coasters. So that's kind of why we decided to start it. And I wanted my wife to join me because, one, I enjoy doing things with her, surprise, surprise. But two, I just feel like it would add more depth to the podcast to hear, someone else's perspective that's, maybe not as much into the industry as I am. So
well, I gotta tell you, I'm excited to have you share this information with other people other than me, because we walk around parks and that's all I hear is roller coaster facts the entire time.
She just listens to me talk about this stuff.
This will be great.
Some of the stuff that we'll talk about, she's probably heard me talk about while we were in line for Powder Keg.
Most likely. Definitely most likely.
Okay, so we're going to be doing, so those of you who don't know, Silver Dollar City is our home park. It's been my home park my whole life, and then after Haley and I got married, we moved back into the area that I grew up, and so Silver Dollar City is our home park. It's just a couple hours away from where we're at. So we figured what better, coaster and park to start with than Powder Keg at Silver Dollar City. So both of us really enjoy, so just to talk about Powder Keg for a little bit, both of us really enjoy Powder Keg. Yeah. I think both of us, it's probably both of our favorite rides at Silver Dollar City.
It definitely is my favorite.
So a lot of people would say the Outlaw Run and Time Traveler are their favorites at the park, which I enjoy. I don't know what your opinion is on Outlaw Run and Time Traveler, but
honestly, I think I like Outlaw Run a little bit better than Time Traveler. Yeah. I'm not much of a spinning person, and I didn't think I would like Outlaw Run as much as I did. But
yeah. Well, you were really worried to ride Time Traveler for a while too, just because of how dizzy you can get. So we rode when we were in Orlando. We rode Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket at Universal, and
sick.
she almost passed out when we got off that ride just from
I did pass out on the ride, but then
when we got off the ride,
she was so sick.
So
sick.
she's kind of wary of rides that can do that, and so she was worried about Time Traveler, but she eventually tried it, and you liked it more than I thought you thought you would, I think. So.
Absolutely.
But yeah, and I really enjoy Time Traveler too. It's my number 2 at the park. But I'm a sucker for launch coasters, and so I really enjoy Powder Keg. So Powder Keg, it gets overlooked in the industry a lot, mostly because, well, when it was built, it was more popular. But now that Silver Dollar City's built, Outlaw Run and Time Traveler, they get a lot more attention. So Powder Keg doesn't get talked about that much these days. But a lot of enthusiasts have said that even though Silver Dollar City doesn't have a hypercoaster like Candemonium at Hershey Park, where lots of airtime. Silver Dollar and hypercoaster is any coaster that's over 200 feet. That's what that term means. So, and Powder Keg doesn't hit that height limit, but it has so much airtime that it does the same thing that a hypercoaster would.
So Wildfire isn't even considered.
No, because two things. One, Wildfire is considered a looping coaster, which hypercoaster is one that doesn't go upside down.
As the general public, I don't know.
Well, that's fine. That's what you're here for. So, but Wildfire is only 155 feet too, so it's shorter than Candemonium.
Alrighty
then. But yeah, so even though Silver Dollar City doesn't have a hypercoaster, Powder Keg sort of fills that gap in their lineup. The year Powder Keg was built, it was nominated for the Golden Ticket Awards, that's like the most popular.
You've talked to me about this before.
Yeah, it's the most popular like amusement park industry or amusement park awards out there. So it was nominated for the Golden Ticket Awards Best Ride of 2005, but it lost out to Hades, which is at Mount Olympus in Wisconsin. So
darn Hades.
And in its opening year, it was ranked number 40 in the Steel Coaster rankings by the Golden Ticket Awards. Fell out of the top 50 in 2007. And they only do 1 through 50, so you don't know where it's ranked other than that. So, Powder Keg is renowned for its incredibly low height limit. You only have to be 42 inches to ride Powder Keg.
Really?
Which is why, so my little brother Levi, he got to ride it for the first time this past summer, and it was like his first real roller coaster. He'd rode some stuff at Disney, but this was like his first big roller coaster. And
his face was
oh my
priceless.
gosh, his face was hilarious. So, so you only have to be 42 inches to ride it. By comparison, Big Thunder Mountain is 40. Space Mountain is 44. So you can be shorter. Like, shorter people can ride Powder Keg than you can Space Mountain, which is interesting. And then for comparison, another launch coaster, Accelerator at Knott's Berry Farm, is 52 inches. So it's a 10-inch difference between Powder Keg and Accelerator.
Which is crazy with how fast it goes. That just kind of blows my mind.
Yeah. So the article I read is that's typically 4 to 5 years old is when you hit 42 inches. So pretty crazy for how intense Powder Keg is to be, 4 to 5 years old.
That's crazy. Now, for most of you, this being our first podcast, we do have a 2-year-old son, which his name is Parker, and so for him to ride that in 2 years.
Isn't that crazy?
Oh my. That makes me nervous as a mom.
Yeah.
So.
He hasn't even rode a roller coaster yet to think about riding Powder Keg.
We're hoping to take him on his first roller coaster this summer, or even in Disney World in December.
Yeah. So we'll see. He should be able to ride his first roller coaster by the end of the year. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, and then in the CoasterBot rankings, which CoasterBot, for some of you on the podcast might not even know this, but CoasterBot is a website where people can go in and rank the roller coasters that they've ridden. And then once a year, they will come out with rankings based on everybody that's voted for that year. So, and just anybody can do it. It's not like you have to be invited to do it or whatever. So I participated in this year. It's the first time I've done it.
Which is the one where everybody was voting for the absurd Peppa Pig.
No, that's for the USA Today top 10 new rides for the year. I was telling her, you guys probably know about this, but how they USA Today was putting out a poll for the top 10 coasters of the year. And or maybe it was new coasters. I think it was new coasters for the past couple of years. And Peppa Pig is getting voted by everyone in the community, and it's still at number 1 as of this morning. So it's really funny. That's typical roller coaster enthusiasts for you. So, but yeah, so CoasterBot's separate from that. But so in the CoasterBot rankings, Powder Keg does rank in the top 100 coasters in the country at 94. Beats out coasters such as Expedition Everest at Animal Kingdom, Great Bear at Hershey Park, and Valraven at Cedar Point. It ranks 3rd at Silver Dollar City behind Outlaw Run, which is ranked at number 12. Time Traveler is ranked at number 24, but it's ahead of Wildfire, ranked at number 103.
Which I can agree with. I'm not a fan of Wildfire for different reasons.
Yeah, she doesn't like the over-the-head restraints, which... Yeah. And Wildfire's definitely gotten a lot bumpier over the years. I think it could use a retrack, but...
new restraints.
I would love if they put some of their vest restraints on Wildfire, but that'd be expensive, and I think it's popular enough they probably won't do that. So maybe not until... I'm hoping they're going to build a new roller coaster, Silver Dollar City, in the next year or two, because it's been almost 5 years since Time Traveler, so... They're due for a new one, and maybe after the new one's built, maybe then Wildfire will be number 4 in the lineup at that point. So, or number 5 in the lineup. So maybe it would get some attention after that.
Well, I can only hope, right?
Yeah, I just hope they don't get rid of Wildfire, because there have been rumors of that too. So, anyway, but I think it's picturesque enough that they'd keep it. Like it's definitely
a beautiful coaster.
It's definitely the most photographic, or what's the term I'm looking for? The most
photogenic.
Photogenic. Yeah. Thank you. Definitely the most photogenic ride in the park.
For sure, but like I said, I'm not a fan of it. It gives me quite a headache when I get off. So.
Yeah, you're not the only one. I've seen other people complain about that too. So. All right, well, let's dive right into the history of Powder Keg.
Let's go. I'm excited.
Yeah, let's go back to 1998.
Wow. We were 2 years old when this coaster came out. Can you believe that?
That's crazy. All right. April 1998. We're going to start in SeaWorld Orlando, actually.
What?
Yeah, so SeaWorld Orlando opened Journey to Atlantis, a water coaster built by Mock Rides. So I've got some, for those of you listening, I have some pictures pulled up that I'll be showing Haley just to give her some visual aids. But I'll put some of these on my Twitter page, or the Twitter page for the podcast. I'll plug that at the end of the episode. But so this is Journey to Atlantis. I haven't rode this version at Orlando. I have rode the version at SeaWorld San Diego when I was really, really small. It was probably one of the first coasters I rode because it was small enough that my dad was able to convince me to go on it. I was still terrified though.
Of course you were.
Yeah, this was before I rode Outlaw Run and finally got into coasters. But so this was generally considered the first water coaster that had ever come out. So you can see it has like a coaster section here, but then it's also got like a log flume type section.
Interesting.
And then at the very end of the coaster section of the ride, there was another splashdown. So there were 2 splashdowns on the ride. So
you get wet, and then you dry off from the coaster, and then you get wet.
And then you get wet again, exactly.
Of course. All right, cool.
So you end up wet no matter what. So the ride was pretty popular. It's still there today. And like I said, they ended up building another one at SeaWorld San Diego. And they built a third one at SeaWorld San Antonio. So each of the SeaWorld parks now have one of these water coasters.
We'll have to go on that one. So.
Yeah, it's a fun one. So this was from Vic Abbey at the time, SeaWorld's general manager. He said, "After you've made our journey to Atlantis, no other attraction or ride will ever be the same. It's not just the speed and drops of a coaster, but an illusionary sensory encounter that wraps our guests in its multiple layers and sends them hurtling into unexpected dangers and thrills." So that's quite a lot. But it was popular. A lot of people enjoyed it. And nothing had really been done like this at the time. There were some log flumes that had like coaster-like elements. Like it might go down a drop and come back up rather than coming down into a splash. So, I don't know. There were log flumes that had similar things. But this was the first time where we had seen like a roller coaster and a log flume all combined together.
Okay.
So, following the success of this, coaster manufacturer Premier Rides took notice and wanted to develop their own version of the coaster. So, but instead of calling it a water coaster like Mock Rides did, they called it a liquid coaster. So, made it different. Premier Rides, they were relatively new in the industry, but they had become popular for some of their launch coasters. So they did Flight of Fear, which is at King's Dominion and King's Island. So we'll get to try that one later this summer.
Yes, we will.
And then they also did Mr. Freeze it's called Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast nowadays, but it was just Mr. Freeze. This one's at Six Flags St. Louis and Six Flags over Texas. So they had become pretty popular for their launch coasters, but they had never done this liquid coaster. This was something new. So September 25th, 1998, Silver Dollar City announced that they would be constructing a brand new coaster. Family visitors to Silver Dollar City had dwindled in the early 1990s, but they had been bringing in recent additions to the park to bring an increase in attendance and revenue, trying to focus more on families, try to get more people there, just because you get a lot of families in Branson anyway.
Right.
So that's what they got to focus on to get people to the park.
It's interesting because, like, my dad, remembers going to Silver Dollar City with his travel bus company.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to hear his perspective of when he went to it. Like, it was not really an amusement park. It was more, you go to the shop there kind of thing.
Yeah. So there was a few rides there, but then it was like the shopping was the most important aspect. And then like exploring the cave.
Right.
And so... But now, definitely, it's definitely become a destination amusement park over the past 20, 30 years. So in response to surveys, the park had adjusted its emphasis toward families. In 1993, the park opened Thunderation and Aerodynamics Mine Train. They added Geyser Gulch in 1997 and Splash Harbor in 1998. In an effort to continue to push the park towards high-tech thrills, Silver Dollar City struck a deal with Premier Rides to build Ripsaw Falls, which would be their first liquid coaster, set to open in 1999. Cost would be nearly $7 million, and it would be the park's largest single investment to date. And ride would be built on a 6-acre plot of land near the Opera House and was expected to attract an additional 100,000 visitors per year and raise the level of competition with other theme parks in the region, like Worlds of Fun and Six Flags St. Louis. So, spokeswoman Lisa Rao said, I think it's Rao, I don't know, R-A-U, I think it's Rao, Lisa Rao. Okay.
We'll go with it.
Said the ride, though in keeping with the park's theme, would be in a different league than anything else the park had done before, which is true. I mean, Thunderation is pretty thrilling. I think that was probably definitely their first thrill coaster that they put in the park, but the Aero Mine Train had been done for 20 years at that point.
Right.
So this was the first time Silver Dollar City was going to be, introducing something brand new that hadn't been done in another park before.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. Sometime between the announcement and the final opening, the ride name was changed from Ripsaw Falls to Buzzsaw Falls. So, and this was the official announcement that they sent out to the guests. So, this is really interesting with this giant saw blade in the middle of the coaster track. That's pretty aggressive, but also that you never saw it coming. That's a joke I would make.
That was totally a joke I would make.
So
I feel like they still have like parts of this advertisement though in the decorations of the ride. Like if you go out on around the ride,
queue?
Through the queue, but not only that, but I think like on the one side of the ride, I thought there was a giant sawmill. So they might be wrong.
Well, we'll go over some parts of the ride are still there.
Right,
and I tried to reach out to the park to see if maybe some remnants of the ride had been placed around other parts of the park, but they never got back to me because we're a small podcast right now. So maybe someday I'll get an answer on that.
That'd be awesome.
All right. So the coaster was often advertised as the world's first liquid coaster. This is technically true because of the liquid versus water coaster. They named it differently. Also, the other difference, this ride, if you look at this picture of Journey to Atlantis, you can see that the boat kind of sits inside the coaster track.
Huh.
Whereas Buzzsaw Falls was meant to be a boat that would actually be able to sit on top of a roller coaster track.
Weird.
So it was a little different in that way. So they were able to advertise it as the first of its kind, even though it was pretty dang similar to something that had already opened the year before. But, most people live so far away from SeaWorld Orlando in this area that, they may have never even heard of Journey to Atlantis.
That's true.
So, according to the park, the purpose of the ride was to be twofold. Obviously, one, to bring in more guests, but two, it was meant to be a high capacity ride that could generate, like, get a lot of people through, so it'd help decrease the wait times with all the other rides in the park. So.
Yeah, we don't see that as much anymore.
No.
I feel like the wait time is still, like, excruciatingly painful, so.
Yeah, it's definitely better at Solar City than other parks, but some of those lines get pretty long. So.
I think especially at Midnight Madness, man.
Oh, Moonlight Madness is
wait.
crazy. Yeah, there's like a 2-hour wait for Wildfire.
Oh, it's awful.
Yeah, that was, Mike Hutcherson. It was originally scheduled to open in April 1999, but its official debut was pushed to Memorial Day weekend following construction delays. Mike Hutcherson, the park's senior vice president at the time, said that the cutting-edge technology and the challenging terrain was to blame for the setbacks, which, if none of you have been to Solar City, it's definitely challenging terrain to work with. Lots of hills, lots of trees.
Yeah, I mean, even walking through the park, you see that quite a bit.
It's a workout to work.
Wear your tennis
shoes
for sure, because it's quite the terrain. To
it definitely makes the coasters unique, because both Thunderation and Time Traveler, go out of the station straight into a downhill drop section.
Which I think because it being unique to that, I love it.
I like that they use the terrain to their advantage.
Especially in the fall, it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I ride the roller coaster even just for the picturesque moments.
Yeah, for sure. So, during construction, the park put an emphasis on saving as many trees as possible. They still do this anytime they've come out and said, like, anytime they take down a tree during construction of a ride,
they plant a new one.
They plant 2 new ones.
That's right. Yep. You've told me this before.
I have told you about that. So that, I'm not sure if this is when they started doing that, but they were doing it at this point, and they continue to do that today. So, and they said the infamously rocky soil at the Ozarks also presented challenges. Which, if you've ever tried to plant a garden in this area, that is absolutely true. They said at one point the crew hit rock while digging for some of the ride's water pumps, and they had to end up blasting the rock out of there. So they said that delayed.
Imagine walking through the park,
just hear it blasting. I don't know if they did it at night, but anyway, yeah.
Still,
that's crazy.
I mean, I feel like there's people that live close enough to the park that
They might have. Yeah, that's interesting. So. As the park neared Memorial Day weekend, the opening was pushed once again to mid-July. During testing for the ride, it seems that the final splashdown was an issue. Originally, Splashdown section was supposed to be just water, but the decision was made to add 450 feet of additional track from the bottom of the hill all the way underneath the Splashdown. So you can see that here, how the track goes all the way down the Splashdown. So I couldn't find an official reason why this was done, but my guess is either one, the boats weren't stable enough as it hit the water, and so the track keeps the boat stable, or two, maybe it just was turning weird and wasn't going straight. I don't know.
Well, I can tell you that's a lot of water, so I'm sure you would have gotten soaked on this.
We will talk about how much water there was on this ride. We will get to that, because that impacts why this ride is no longer there. So, and finally opening in July of 1999, but not in time for 4th of July weekend.
Oh.
So they missed Memorial Day, missed 4th of July. So that's huge days I missed.
You said it cost more than even Time Traveler did. It's the most expensive.
It was the most expensive one to date. So at that point, it was the most that they had spent on a ride.
Oh, got it. So to date, meaning at that point.
Yeah. So it cost more than Thunderation did, which was before that was the most.
Which
expensive
I can totally see that, because Thunderation's kind of rickety, but
not when it was built, but it is pretty rickety nowadays. So.
So they've kind of maintained, I feel Powder Keg a little bit more than Thunderation.
Yeah, and it's newer, so that helps too.
Yeah.
All right, so finally opening, it was the tallest and fastest coaster at the park, standing 110 feet tall, reaching a top speed of 50 miles an hour. It had 7 boats that held 10 riders each. Ride time was roughly 3 minutes, and the coaster's course stretched over 2,200 feet in length. 1,700 of that was steel, with 500 feet of trackless flume. The guideways on the boats were specially designed to be multifunctional, so I think I've got a picture of it here. So you can kind of see that it had these wheels on the sides of the boats, So it worked as, in two ways. It worked to keep it on the rails once it got to the coaster section, but also as it's going through the flume section, it kind of worked as a bumper to keep it off the walls.
Moved up to the side like that. That's cool.
Yeah. And the boats were made of fiberglass, but were painted to look like wood, as you can see. So.
Yeah, I have been able to tell the difference.
Yeah, so they did a pretty good job.
They did a good job, yeah.
All right, so this was the ride experience. Riders boarded the 10-seat boats in 5 rows of 2. One of the less popular features of the ride was the clear plastic shields lining the boats like windows on a car. So you can see that in the picture here. It's got like these little plastic shields on the edge.
Yeah,
there's it's hard to tell, but there's actually one in the front too, like a windshield. Apparently, the boats were prone to flooding, which is why they put those in to kind of keep more water out of the boat. Which is strange because Journey to Atlantis doesn't have anything like that, and it doesn't have problems with the boats flooding. So I don't know if the drainage system for the boats wasn't good enough. Might have been, yeah. Or I'm not sure what it was. But
I feel like those doors, though, too, like, that would be an issue with you, like, running into the doors. It doesn't look comfortable.
No, it doesn't look comfortable. So I guess they would, like, swing out like a door, and then after you sat down, they would, like, swing back into place. So. The first portion of Buzzsaw Falls was relatively tame. After departing the station, boats entered a free-floating segment in a water trough that winded through a logging camp. Park wanted to make sure this portion of the ride still remained relatively exciting. At the time, the water portion on the ride was among the fastest free-floating water sections in the country at about 11 miles per hour. So, you weren't just, like, kind of muddling along. Like,
do you know off the top of your head how fast, Mystic River?
See, I'm not sure. I saw somewhere that I was trying to find, like, maybe like Splash Mountain, what the speed of the flumes is, but I couldn't really find it anywhere. The only thing I
feel like Mystic River is incredibly fast.
There's definitely parts of Mystic River that are,
especially the slide part. Oh my gosh.
The one thing I could find was I found like a manufacturer of rapid rides that their rapids, like the typical flume speed was 6 miles per hour. So I don't know. It definitely is going pretty fast through that section. So the boats transitioned to rail as they entered a sawmill, passing under a 6-foot rotating saw blade. So you can kind of see that's the idea behind the saw blade right there. And you would go underneath it, and they would kind of swing over your head. And it gave the illusion that it was going to, like, hit you, but you never came within 7 feet of the blade in reality. So after a short lift hill, the boat plunged down a heavily wooded hillside. That's where it transitioned into, like, the coaster section.
So I can see it right there on the diagram.
Yep, so it comes in this coaster section and makes this, big sweeping turn to the right. It was a 270-degree turn, and that's where it hit its top speed of 50 miles an hour. From the top of the lift hill to the lowest point was about 90 feet. So that's, it was a 90-foot drop, but it was, pretty gradual just as you're coming down the side of the hill. The boat slowed as it exited the turn and approached the lift hill. Buzzsaw Falls' 95-foot lift hill offered views of the Ozark Mountains. After cresting the lift and maneuvering through a 90-degree turn, the boat passed through a small shack-like structure,
right,
and plunged 65 feet into a pond below. At the bottom was a tangled mess of logs that sprayed mist, creating a photo-worthy scene as the boat splashed into the water. So you can kind of see the logs down here.
Yeah.
And they sprayed like a mist.
Like a mist, yeah.
So it kind of gave the illusion you were going to crash into this pile of logs or whatever, but then you go through into the splashdown section. Coaster was met with great reception among the guests. It was a fairly new concept in the industry. We talked about it wasn't brand new, but most people in this area hadn't seen anything like it. And wait times for the ride would often be an hour and seemed to be a successful investment for the park. I saw some reviews of people that didn't realize it was a roller coaster, because if you think about it, you would walk up, so that if you think of how Powder Keg's set up now, you would walk up and the launch track goes off to the left-hand side and then, disappears out into the woods. Back when this was here, you would walk up the hillside, you'd look to the left,
like
and it's the splashdown section. So you just see it come down to the splashdown, and you can't see the rest of the ride.
I can't even imagine that, you getting on the ride, fully expecting it to just be like a water ride, and nope, you're going on a roller coaster whether you like it or not. So
There was, if you looked at the sign when you came into the ride, it would say on there, like, wet roller coaster experience or something like that. So if, like, you were paying attention, you would be able to see that. Yeah, some people, I saw reviews of people that were like, had no idea it was a roller coaster until they got on the ride.
Oh my goodness.
So, let's see. The ride's fame spread throughout the industry and helped Silver Dollar City gain a reputation as a destination theme park. The ride even helped Silver Dollar City win the 2000 Applause Award for Excellence and actually beat out Kennywood for that award. So.
Oh, well, excuse me.
So, however, it quickly became obvious that the ride had several technical issues. The first issue was with the boats taking on water, which we had talked about.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that.
Early sketches of the ride. So if you see this sketch, you'll notice the plastic shields aren't on the boat in that sketch.
Not on that one, but yeah, in the picture.
But in the actual picture, there is. So I don't know if this was like something they discovered during testing and had to add on to the ride afterwards. Because we'll talk about this later, but Premier Rides only...
honestly, those shields look like something you would see from COVID on it.
They kind of do. They look like... There's what is it? New Texas Giant is a roller coaster down in Six Flags over Texas, and they have like these plastic shields on that are like meant to keep you from sticking your hands out, so that you don't like hit your hands on like trees or coaster supports. But yeah, that's kind of what it looks like. So it's interesting.
That is interesting.
What else? The ride also suffered from oversensitive infrared sensors. Anytime these sensors were triggered, the ride would have to be completely shut down until the issue was resolved. Usually there was no issue, though. It just got triggered by water or something, and then they'd go to fix it, and there was actually nothing wrong. So that's annoying.
I feel like as like a general public person, too, like that would be really frustrating. Like... You know, I feel like that's happened to us before at different places, like where we get in line and we wait till the very front, and then you're like, oh, just kidding, the ride's shut down, and then you go get in line again, like after a couple hours, and then, oh, just kidding, the ride's closed again. Like, I feel like I'd be frustrated with that, so
yeah, well,
that makes complete sense.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Like, that's one of the things I saw is that, you know, it caused excessive amounts of downtime for the ride, which, you know, leads to angry and unsatisfied guests. Which
like
especially,
me.
Yeah, well, especially if you're coming to see a brand new ride, like if the brand new ride's not open, then it's like, you know, I've rode everything else here before. You know, there's other things to ride, but I came here to ride this, and so it's definitely annoying when that happens. This was especially an issue with a ride that has 7 boats. So if you think about it, if the whole ride has to shut down, but you've got 4 boats that are out on the track right now,
that's
all 4 of them have to stop.
Yeah.
And, that just sounds horrible.
It sounds like a nightmare.
So because of that, they rarely ran all 7 boats at once. In fact, I saw this one interview where the manager of the ride was talking about how they had just gotten to 5 boats. And he was super excited about that. So they still had 2 boats not being used, but you know, 5 boats was an accomplishment to get it to that point. And to add to all of that, the coaster was extremely expensive to run, not to mention the constant maintenance and, you know, dealing with the flooding and with the sensors. The water had to be constantly pumped into the attraction in order for it to run properly. So, like this section that we were looking at here, like that's not just like standing water. Like it's constantly pumped and flowing
like a pool.
through.
Like that's insane.
Yeah, and so if they, you know, to shut off the water, basically shuts off the whole ride. Right. In order for it to continue to run properly, they had to constantly pump water.
Well, because didn't they have to drain it too and then completely refill it?
I mean, probably, yeah.
Because I know that they've had to do that with, like, Mystic River.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when there's some kind of issue, sometimes they have to do that. So.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so it was a pain. Okay, so that's what it's dealing with throughout the rest of 1999, and then as it opens again in 2000. And then in July of 2000, just a year after the attraction had opened, Silver Dollar City announced Wildfire, a $14 million B&M steel looping coaster. The 3,073-foot coaster was the park's first inverting coaster with a top speed of 66 miles an hour and a 155-foot drop. It would now be the fastest and tallest coaster in the park. A little under a year later, Wildfire would open on April 6, 2001, and it would break into the top 50 in the Amusement Today's Golden Ticket Awards for steel coasters, which was the first time Silver Dollar City had done that, as far as I can tell. I couldn't see them on any other Golden Ticket Awards before then. So
I mean, which we can get more into Wildfire on a different episode. So.
Yeah, we'll talk about Wildfire at some point. So, but in 2001, like Wildfire was pretty groundbreaking for some of the things. It wasn't like top of the industry because it wasn't the first time that model had been built.
Got it.
But it was definitely like on people's radar when it was open back then. So that was 21 years ago. Now it's definitely been outclassed by other things, but back then it was a big deal. And so after Wildfire opened, then that kind of became the new headline attraction instead of Buzzsaw Falls. And then in the following years, the park's wet dry raft slide, the Water Boggin, which you haven't even seen because they closed it down before you ever got to go to Silver Dollar City. But when I was a kid, that was my favorite ride, was the Water Boggin.
And I remember you telling me
about I think I've told you about this, because you can still see the building that it was in. So when you're over by Fireman's Landing, there's like that huge wooden structure.
Oh.
That's where the water slide started, at the top of that building, and then
you told me didn't you have to climb the stairs?
Yeah, you had to climb to the top.
I wouldn't ride it just to climb the stairs. I hate Time Traveler for that reason.
Because you have to climb down.
Climb down the stairs.
And then climb all the way back up to the top of the station. Yeah.
I think it was poorly planned in that sense, but that's a different story.
I think it was purposely planned to give them plenty of space to put the queue.
It bugs me. So I'm like, why would you? I don't know.
So,
but that's my general public.
That's your GP view. So in 2003, the park had made the decision to completely overhaul Water Boggin, and they had to completely replace the boats. I guess, from what I remember, it used to have like a big steel boat type thing that you would sit in, and those were having issues. So that in 2003, they removed those and replaced them with like inner tube style boats, like a typical big water slide, right?
Got it.
And so between the addition of Wildfire and people and Silver Dollar City investing money into one of the other water rides at the park, people started to wonder if maybe Buzzsaw Falls was going to have like a major refurbishment, or if it would be on the chopping block. It was still having tons of issues at this point. I saw a post that many employees referred to it as Buzzsaw Flaws. That's what the nickname was for it among the employees at the park. And so yeah, there were lots of rumors floating around. And then in early 2004, Buzzsaw Falls didn't open with the rest of Silver Dollar City. And shortly thereafter, they put up fences around the ride, and that's when, rumors started to fly.
Shore indication.
That's the oh no, what's happening? So lots of people, there was like signage put up that indicated a new ride was coming. And then they sent out a survey to some of the longtime Silver Dollar City guests and pass holders, and someone posted some of these ride concepts that they were asking people about. So one of them was a launched coaster, which obviously we're going to talk about. That's what they ended up doing, was Powder Keg.
Right.
But you can see some of these are really interesting. So they looked at a Doppelmayr suspended coaster, which, for those of you that aren't familiar with that, it was basically a combination between a ski lift and a roller coaster. It was like a single rail, and that you would sit 4 in a row and swing down like you were on a ski lift, but going downhill.
I mean, that does sound like fun, but
yeah, there was only one ever made by Doppelmayr, and it failed miserably.
Well, so I'm glad that they didn't put that in.
They didn't go with that. So, and then the Great Mine Ride, which is confusing because it sounds like a mine train coaster, but they already had Thunderation, so I'm not sure what the idea behind that was. The Great Barn Play Area, which obviously ended up actually coming in, they
which our son still loves to this day.
He loves
they
that
did
barn
put it
area,
in later, I guess. I don't know when did they put that in?
We'll talk about it. I have it later on. We'll talk about the barn swing and all that, but clearly that this was something that they've been thinking about for a while. So, and then it looked like they were looking at a shot tower, which is basically it's like a launch tower instead of just a drop tower. It's those ones that launch you up in the air and then you drop down.
Got it.
So, which they actually have one now, but they got it from another park. So the Firefall over by that Fireman's Landing. We haven't gone on it because I'm not a huge fan of the drop towers, but anyway.
Oh, drop tower does.
Oh, yeah. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
so.
no.
So, but then this one is interesting. So, it's called the Ice House Coaster, which I guess was meant to be like an indoor coaster, which like based on like an ice house, like butcher house type of deal. And it meant to be like an inverted coaster, like where you would be swinging on like those big like ice hooks that they have.
Weird.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess this has been an idea that's been around for Silver City for like a long time. Like it was first introduced back in like the 70s or 80s.
I wonder if it's still an idea because
I don't know.
Sounds interesting.
It does sound interesting, and Silver City hasn't done an indoor roller coaster since Fire in the Hole, which was a long time ago.
Fire in the Hole's
then I know you have your own opinions of that.
Yeah. We'll talk about Fire in the Hole a different day. So.
But like Dollywood has another indoor coaster that they built.
And Kennywood has one, and so does Hershey Park.
Yep.
So I mean, they're popular. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And obviously Disney pretty much only does indoor coasters. So.
Who's excited for Guardians of the Galaxy?
That is.
I am so excited for that ride.
So.
Anyways.
So these were some of the ideas they sent out, but clearly the most popular was the launch coaster because that's what they ended up going with.
They did because it's still my favorite ride.
So in April, some enthusiasts discovered that Hershend Entertainment, which is the company that owns Silver Dollar City and Dollywood, they had trademarked the name Powder Keg, and rumors began to circle that the launch coaster was, what they were going through. And so this was the sign that they had outside on the fencing. New ride coming in 2005, A Blast in the Wilderness.
Oh, fun.
But
that's a cool picture.
Yep. But that was it. That was all that they had. Then finally, November 6, 2004, Silver Dollar City formally announced a new launch coaster, Powder Keg, A Blast in the Wilderness, which is its full official name. I never call it that, but that's the full official name of the coaster.
Know that.
You didn't know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Powder Keg, A Blast in the Wilderness is the full official name of the coaster. Which is funny because it doesn't even say that on any of the signage in the park. It doesn't.
That's why I was like, did I know that?
It may say it on the sign that... Because the ride has 3 signs. If you haven't been there, there's like a small sign that's down at the bottom of the hill that's like, I don't know, probably a couple feet wide. Okay. And then as you walk up the hill, there's the big sign that's like up and over the footpath.
And that only says Powder
That
Keg.
one definitely only says Powder Keg. And then there's the sign that's above the actual entrance to the ride, which also just says Powder Keg. Huh. I think the one at the bottom of the hill, the little sign, I think that one actually says A Blast in the Wilderness on it.
Interesting.
But it's funny because it's the smallest sign out of the 3.
Yeah.
So. All right. In the theaters... I skipped this. Designed by manufacturer S&S Power, the $10 million Powder Keg would launch riders from 0 to 53 miles an hour in 2.8 seconds, followed by airtime moments and overbank turns. In the years prior to this announcement, S&S had gained prominence in the industry for their extremely intense air-compressed launch coasters. So, using the same type of system as a hydraulic launch, these launches used compressed air to launch the vehicle instead of hydraulic fluid and nitrogen. So I'm no engineer, so I don't know all the details behind how it works. But S&S would advertise that it's more economically friendly to do air compressed launches instead of using hydraulic fluid and nitrogen. So
makes sense.
So and when with Silver Dollar City announced that, they even made that a big deal of like it was more economically friendly to do an air compressed launch.
Which I feel like that whole park,
tries to be more do like kind of focus on that
economically friendly kind of thing because of the whole trees and. Anyways, that's cool.
Yep. So, so the technology developed by S&S for the Thrust Air 2000 model, which the first coaster they did was Hypersonic Xlc, which was at King's Dominion.
Like fun. So, is it still there?
Unfortunately not. So we'll talk about that.
Oh, what a bummer!
I know. So this one went from 0 to 82 miles an hour in like 1.8 seconds. It was crazy.
Whoa.
So the technology had produced launches that no one had heard of. This one is still there, but this one's in Japan. So this is Doja Dompa.
We're not going to Japan anytime soon.
No. This is the fastest accelerating coaster in the world. It goes from 0 to 112 miles per hour in 1.56 seconds.
Yikes! Okay, I love launch coasters. I'm all for them, but I feel like that one would make me really
This thing is crazy.
sick. It sounds intense.
They had some reports. I think it was over the summer that they got. I don't think they got sued, but there were some reports that people were having spinal injuries on the ride.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, not great.
No thanks.
Not great, but
I'm okay. I'll pass on that one. General public says...
GP says no.
No.
Powder Keg would utilize the same technology, but with far less intensity. Powder Keg is the acceleration is three times slower on Powder Keg.
In all honesty, I feel like as, if I'm representing as a general public member... I think, that is way more family friendly. And with the height restrictions that they have, I feel like that's, such a family friendly ride that, a lot of ages can more enjoy. And, I've even seen, elderly people get on this ride. So I feel like you can still enjoy the launch feature, no matter who you are kind of thing.
Absolutely. So. And I was going to say the same thing. I couldn't see anything official, but that's my guess. I'm guessing it was because they tried to have thrilling stuff at Silver Dollar City, but they're not trying to... I mean, Outlaw Run's the most intense thing they have there.
Yeah.
So, anything... more intense than that. I don't really see them doing that. They tried to...
I think they would, maybe in the future. But...
I mean, maybe. They definitely do push the limits. But even Time Traveler, it's a expensive ride. It's a lot of fun, very thrilling. But it's not intense, per se.
Right.
I think,
I think they might go a little bit more intense, but nothing like...
No,
Mr. Let's break your back in Japan.
No, nothing like this. So.
Oh, goodness.
So it's possible they could have also done it to cut down on costs. So, for example, Powder Keg was $10 million. Hypersonic Xlc at King's Dominion was $15 million. So a little bit pricier. So, because of the construction that's been going over the past year, Powder Keg was slated to be ready in just a few short months for the 2005 season. So they announced it in November, and it opened 5 months later. Which is crazy. That's
a really short amount of time.
Yeah, people knew something was coming, but the announcement to be 5 months before it actually opened, you never see that anymore.
Which, I think that'd be really exciting for it to be open that quickly after, they announced it.
Yeah.
I wish they did that more, honestly. We've been waiting for Tron and Galaxy to open in Disney World
forever.
For how long now?
Tron's they've been working on that for 28 years, something like that.
Something like that. Anyways, no.
No, it's not that long, obviously, but man, it feels like they've been building that thing forever. April 8th, 2005, Powder Keg opened to the public and continues to operate to this day.
So their anniversary's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. So, which makes sense. I mean, the park opens mid-March.
Right.
So if it's
it might have opened.
That may have been opening day in 2005. I'm not sure. So
makes sense.
Unbeknownst to some, until opening day, Powder Keg was not a completely new ride. For the most part, it is, but it had utilized parts of the old Buzzsaw Falls coaster. The park had never advertised that Powder Keg would use parts of Buzzsaw Falls, which makes sense. You're not really advertising that kind of thing. But you can even see. So this was an artist rendition that was done of Powder Keg, and we'll get into it. But the parts that Buzzsaw Falls that it used are not in this. So the lift hill, and that's the most defining features. The lift hill is still left over from Buzzsaw Falls, and there's no lift hill in this artist rendition that the park sent out.
It's kind of blurry too.
It is kind of hard to tell, but it would be right here.
Got it.
And you can, there's definitely no lift hill.
Which riding the Powder Keg, and because you've told me that they've used the old rides parts before, and so riding it, you can definitely tell which parts are the older parts and which ones are the newer ones. But I think it's a feature that I love, and I think it's, just a showing of the progress of how far Silver Dollar City has come, for sure.
Yeah,
so.
Definitely. So, let's see. Park had never advertised, and okay. So the ride experience for Powder Keg is as follows. Riders board 16-seat trains in rows of 2, 4 cars per train. The train disembarks from the station into a unique transfer track that moves the train sideways up to the launch platform.
Which is one of my favorite parts of the ride. Yeah. I mean, honestly,
It's very strange. And
it's so different than anything I've read.
Yeah, we'll talk about why they had to do that.
Huh, okay.
Yep.
Oh, well, I'm excited too.
Yeah. So the launch platform also includes a section of track behind the train. So this like, I don't know if I have a picture of here, but there's like that spike that goes up that's all black and burnt and they like designed it to look like it's been burnt off. So not only does that look great and fit into the theme, but it also serves as a safety measure in case for some reason the train didn't make it over the first hill and rolled backwards. It would roll backwards through the launch platform and up into that spike, and then that would keep it from crashing into anything.
I did not know that. I thought it was strictly cosmetic.
Mm-hmm. So it's a safety feature too, which is smart.
That is smart. That's cool.
The train rolls out onto the launch track as some audio dialogue plays things such as "You're too close to that nitro" and "Do you smell smoke?"
Do you smell smoke?
Which I've remembered that from when I was a kid. After the launch system engages, a siren plays as the stoplights go red, yellow, yellow, green. The train then launches from 0 to 53 miles per hour in 2.8 seconds.
Which, I have to say, like, the funniest thing whenever, we took Parker and watched it for the first time with him, like, his reaction was, he freaked out, because it's loud. Like, it's not...
Well, and the station shoots off, or not the station, but the launch building shoots off fire from back behind the train when it launches.
It scared him so bad. Our poor kid was just crying, but it's one of our favorite features is, the little 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
Do you smell smoke?
Do you smell smoke? Train launches directly into a 60-foot airtime hill that drops 110 feet as it turns to the right. The train then vaults upward over a second airtime hill and hits its top speed at the bottom of the second hill, which is interesting. I didn't know that. The train then flies through a 120-degree overbank turn, and then leaps into an 85-degree stangle dive to the left. At this point, if you pay careful attention, and I think I've showed you this before, but you'll notice that the track changes as it turns to the right. So, and that's where the transition happens between the new Powder Keg track into the old Buzzsaw Falls track. It stays the same color, but the track construction is different. So if you ever ride Powder Keg and you pay attention, you'll be able to tell that it changes. So just the construction of the track goes from the S&S track is very similar to like the new Vekoma track where it has one big spine, whereas the old the old Buzzsaw Falls track is kind of more like an Intamin design or a Gerstlauer design where it's got like this zigzag pattern with the brackets between the rails. So
Okay.
So anyway, so you can clearly see that difference as it transitions from one track to the old track, or from the new track to the old track from Buzzsaw Falls.
Right. Which, again, like I said before, I've noticed, the difference. Mm-hmm. Like, you can totally tell what the different track looks like, which... Yeah.
Interestingly enough, I noticed that before I knew that. Like, before I was a roller coaster... Well, like, before I was an enthusiast of, like, keeping up on all these things. I pay attention to detail. And so, like, I noticed that.
Which I do too, but, like, I
you never noticed that.
I never noticed it until you mentioned it, and then I was like, oh, well, that's where it was, so kind of thing. So.
Yeah. So, the train tears through the old Buzzsaw Falls track, weaving through a number of steel supports. Magnetic brakes slow the train down before it engages the old lift hill. Riders get time to catch their breath and look around at the beautiful trees at Table Rock Lake.
Yes, they do.
After the lift hill, the track changes back to the new Powder Keg track. The train makes a left turn, dives down another steep drop at 45 miles an hour before hitting a 110-degree Dragonfly Turn. The train leaves the turn and hits a little pop of airtime before running into the final brakes. Okay, so let's talk about how Buzzsaw Falls being there before Powder Keg, how that affects the Powder Keg experience and different remnants of the ride. So, because of the unique construction history behind Powder Keg, the ride is one of the only coasters in the world to feature a launch and a chain lift, which makes sense. Most launch coasters, it just launches you through the whole circuit. So, but it is kind of unique to have two different experiences, which actually makes it one of the longest launch coasters in the world too, because you think of launch coaster, like if it launches you at a station, then the
one
ride
at
is
Hershey.
just... Yeah, like Storm Runner, like when it shoots you out of the station, well, the whole ride's only like 30 seconds. Whereas in Powder Keg, it's like 2.5 minutes because you have like that break in the middle where you're going up the chamber,
and it's such a neat feature because, I think I love Powder Keg so much that I, don't want to get off. So it's fun to have both features in it to kind of give it a longer experience.
Yeah, and one of my favorite parts of the ride is that Dragonfly Turn at the end, where you come down and then it whips you to the left. You get a lot of lateral G's in that Dragonfly Turn. So I enjoy that. I enjoy that they didn't just leave the ride as it was. Like they tried to make it a little more thrilling at the very end too. So. All right, so other than the obvious use of the old track and the lift hill, there are also other remnants of Buzzsaw Falls in the area. Powder Keg uses the same station as Buzzsaw Falls.
Right.
So, the trains even came in and out the same direction. And you can kind of see that here. So, like,
right.
here's
and I love this station so much because the station is where, you kind of go through the queue, and then, like, at the very end, right before you board, there's, like, a bridge over top, and, like, so you get to view, like, them launching, and anyways, I like it.
So what's interesting about that bridge is because of the way the rides were designed, that bridge is actually in a different spot now than it used to be.
Really?
So Powder Keg, when you come into the final breaks, you make a right turn into the back of the station. Well, Buzzsaw Falls, because the splashdown was on the other side, you would make a left turn into the station. So when I was looking at it, this is when they were doing construction on Powder Keg. So you used to walk in right there, and and then you'd get in your boat from there and then exit to the left. But now because the coaster comes from this direction.
Right, you walk up and over.
You walk in on the left side of the station, and then you walk in. Once you get inside the building, you walk up and over the track, and then still boarding from the right side of the track, and then exiting on the left side. So, so it was interesting. I didn't realize that was the. Other than that,
neat little tidbit.
So other than that, the queue's pretty much exactly the same from what I understand. So I couldn't find any pictures of the entrance of Buzzsaw Falls, like from like the ride entrance or like the sign for the ride. I couldn't find anything.
You gotta be honest, Nathan. Not a lot of people would take pictures of the entrance of the...
Why not?
I don't know. I wouldn't, so... I'm the general public.
Oh, so. This is a GP.
Maybe you would, because you're the rider enthusiast.
I guess so. So I guess no enthusiast.
You take pictures of everything with
it's
the ride.
True. I enjoy taking pictures of the coasters.
Which, I mean, to be honest, your pictures are quite good. I feel like if you had I'm sorry. Excuse me. I feel like if you had a really good camera, like you'd be a pretty good photographer.
I mean, the only problem with that is I don't like carrying a lot of stuff when I go to amusement parks. Like,
but like, what if that was like your full-time job?
I mean, I guess. I don't know. Some parks are kind of weird about
that. Or like if you got paid to like go and ride the rides, but like take pictures.
I mean, I'd be down for that, obviously.
I'd be down for that too. So.
Some parks are just kind of weird about when you have like even
paying you, like,
hey,
your pictures are awesome. Like, come ride our rides for free and take pictures.
Right. I just mean like when we were at Hershey, like Candemonium, you can't take anything on the ride.
Right.
You have to put your stuff in a locker, which is, I understand why, but it is kind of frustrating.
Tedious,
so,
yeah.
And then even some of the newer RMC coasters, like they have metal detectors, so like you can't even have your phone with you unless you have like zipper pockets or something like that. So anyway, that's why I try not to have anything like other than
which I feel
the bare
like you
necessities
have, like,
when I go to the park.
Now that you've become like really into like going to amusement parks, you have shorts that have zipper pockets.
It's true. I purposely and that's the thing. Like even in
which
like
I love because then I can keep my phone on my feet too. So.
Yeah, and then I just put it in my pocket.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there's definitely I've definitely seen multiple like in the groups that I'm a part of. I've definitely seen multiple people.
That's our new marketing is roller coaster shorts with zipper pockets.
I've definitely seen people post like they'll find something at Old Navy or whatever, and they'll post it in the groups that I'm a part of. Like, guys, look at these. They're $20, and they have zipper pockets on them.
That's my new idea is advertise it as roller coaster.
Coaster pants.
Coaster pants. That's it. There you go. Trademark. Trademark those coaster pants.
Oh, man. All right. Powder Keg usually is the same. We talked about that. Use the same station. Cute is a little bit different. Because it uses the same station, that's why there's a transfer track. And the reason for that is, so if we go back to this image, so if you think about the fact that the Splashdown and the launch track are in almost exactly the same spot. Well, because Powder Keg is launching away from that spot, whereas in the boats were coming towards you, like they were coming down the hill and splashing down towards the station, and then they would just go past you and go into the back of the station, right? Well, since Powder Keg is leaving from that direction, there wasn't really like an easy way to get the track. Like they could have just done it launching straight out of the station, but then it wouldn't be right next to the path where people get to see it. And
which is
half of the experience.
It's true.
Right?
It truly is. I mean,
every time I ride Powder Keg, I go over there and watch it one time and then get in line. Unless I'm like in a rush or something.
Well, like we've even gone with friends and family, and it's fun to like stand there and watch
and show them the ride before we get on.
Show them, but then like even watch them do it. Like I feel like that's something you don't get to see often, and so being able to watch them, see you later.
So for them to get the coaster or get the train from the station to the launch platform in an easy way, the best thing that they could come up with was doing just a transfer track. Transfer tracks aren't unheard of in the industry. They're just not typically part of the ride experience. They're typically how they get the train off the track and into the maintenance shed. So that they can, or if they need to add a train or remove a train because of how many guests are there.
I can see that,
yeah. So transfer tracks are pretty much on every coaster, but they've just never really used it as part of the ride, which is kind of interesting for Powder Keg. So that's why it's there. And then the other thing that I didn't really notice until I started doing this research, when you're coming on the final brakes, there's that building that's to your left side. So as you come out of that Dragonfly Turn and then you hit the brakes right before you go to the station, there's that building on the left side. That's the old sawmill from Buzzsaw Falls.
Really?
Yeah, so that building is where you used to go through that building and then come out of it and drop down into the coaster section.
Interesting.
The only difference is the actual...
I'm going to pay attention next
So the only difference is there was this little section you can see here. There's like a little part of the building that would like jut out to the side. That's the part you would go through. They got rid of that.
Right.
So now it's... So
I was going to say,
that,
I don't recognize that building, but that
the building is still there, and now I'm pretty sure it's used as the maintenance shed. So I think that's where they house the trains when they're not in use. So so that's left over from Buzzsaw Falls.
I'm gonna really have to pay attention next time we go on there.
And then the last thing that's not so obvious, and then we'll talk about the obvious one. The last thing that's not so obvious is if you here's a better picture so you can see that building. That's where you would come through.
Yeah.
The last thing you can see from this overhead view is this is the water trough that the old Buzzsaw Falls ride used to follow. And so when you're on the ride, if you look down, like on the side of the track to the left and the right, you can see the concrete troughs. I'm trying to see if you can see it in, like down here.
Yeah.
You can see that's where the boats used to go. So if you're ever on Powder Keg, and you can look down to the right and to the left of the track, and you'll see these big concrete troughs on either side of the track.
That's
where
officially cool.
Yep, that's where the boats used to flow through. So it would come around here and then go up through the sawmill.
I mean, they've honestly done a great job hiding that because
I've never noticed it.
Yeah.
Well, and mostly because once you get to the final breaks of the coaster, you're kind of like, whoa, you're not really thinking about looking around. You're kind of like, that was a lot of fun, and you might be out of breath or whatever.
Right.
You're not really looking around at all the details or whatever. Right. So.
Kudos to Silver Dollar City for hiding it that well.
They did a good job. So
great.
The last and most obvious remnant, which I know I've told you about, is if you walk past the entrance and then look back at the Q building, there's part of Coaster Track that's like embedded into the roof, which is just for decoration. But there's also an old Buzzsaw Falls boat
there is.
Embedded into the roof of the building.
Such a fun piece that they added.
Yeah, and I love that they recognize that Buzzsaw Falls was an important part of the park's history, and even though it was a troubled ride and it gave them lots of problems, like, a lot of people still loved the ride and really enjoyed it. And so it's nice of them to have that added touch to
I wish parks
have it
did
call
that
back
more,
to it.
like, the kind of had a throwback of, this is how we came to be. Let's add that to the park kind of thing. And
I agree. So it's nice when they have little touches like that.
I think Silver Dollar City does a great job with, being, throwback to everything too. But, especially this ride, I feel like it's one of the main rides that you just like feel nostalgic on,
definitely.
For sure.
So one thing I did notice when I was looking at it, I'm pretty sure the boat that they embedded in the roof doesn't have the plastic shields on it.
Of course it does.
Which is really funny.
I mean, honestly, can you blame them though? Because those shields are ugly. They really are. I'm like, you guys have to take a look at the pictures because I'm not even kidding you. It reminds me of something that you would see on COVID. Like, for sure.
Yeah, it definitely looks like they're trying to cage you in the boat. Like, so.
Whether you like it or not, you're going on this ride.
Yeah. All right. So, that's pretty much the story behind the ride. Now, there is a couple other things I want to talk about. I have a theory about the opening of Wildfire. I couldn't find any confirmation of this, but here's my theory. Between Thunderation and Buzzsaw Falls was 6 years. Between Wildfire and Powder Keg was 4 years. Between Powder Keg and Outlaw Run was 8 years. And then the Outlaw Run to Time Traveler was 5 years. But between Buzzsaw Falls and Wildfire was only 2 years. Between two major investments. It kind of feels like it was stuffed in there. Like, it feels like Wildfire was stuffed in between the opening of Buzzsaw Falls and Powder Keg. It was only announced a year after Buzzsaw Falls had opened. Here's my theory. I think they were already looking at building a big steel coaster, but I think they rushed the project because Buzzsaw Falls was having so many issues. Like I said, I can't find any confirmation of that, but I know that Buzzsaw Falls was designed to be to put a lot of people through and have a high capacity, and because it was having so many issues, it wasn't. So not only was it drawing more people to the park, but the lines were getting longer because Buzzsaw Falls didn't have the throughput that they wanted it. So
makes sense.
Wildfire has a huge throughput because it's 4 across seating, and
it's a big coaster.
Yeah, you can put 32 people on those B&M trains.
Fast.
So
I feel like honestly, even if there's a so-called wait time, that ride goes pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it has 2 trains, so theoretically it can get 1,300 people through at a time. Gosh, I can't even remember the last time I saw Wildfire with 2 trains. And maybe that's because we don't go in the summer that much. Maybe. We try to go when it's less crowded, but usually it's only 1 train, and the wait time's still only like 10 minutes.
All right, so Silver Dollar City, if you're listening, why
did Wildfire
is our accusation of...
That's not an accusation.
Well, not an accusation, but it's our theory corrective.
I don't even know if they would admit to it if it was true. But
no comment.
No comment. And then once Wildfire opened, I feel like that gave them an excuse to close down Buzzsaw Falls and do the Powder Keg project.
Right.
So, because then they had a new, they weren't closing their headline attraction.
Right.
Because now that was Wildfire. So, I don't know.
It
makes sense, but I don't know.
It would be a smart move.
Yeah,
so.
Since the opening of the ride, there's been very few, if any, changes made. I can't find confirmation of this, but I feel like the dialogue has changed. And you wouldn't know this because, you've only been going to the park for a few years. But we went to Silver Dollar City the year that Powder Keg opened. And I didn't ride it back then because, like I said, I was scared of it. But
I wish you would have.
I wish I would have too. But you can hear the dialogue from the sidewalk, and so I can still hear the dialogue. Yeah, do you smell smoke? I definitely know that's been there the whole time because I remember that from when I was a kid. But there's this one line in particular that plays now. It says the very last line that it plays is "She's gonna blow" or "It's gonna blow."
Yeah, I think it's gonna blow.
I think it's gonna blow. I don't remember that at all from when I was a kid, and I don't know if that's just my memory. Not serving me correctly, or if that's a new addition. I have no idea. So,
interesting.
There is one part of the ride that was originally planned that never came to fruition, and you can see it in the. So for you guys that are listening, I will post this artist rendition. I can't even.
Artist
renditioning of Powder Keg, because we've referenced it a few times now. But you can see there's like this water feature. Here where the final. I've
never seen that. I was gonna mention that earlier, but
so
they have like the fire. So I wonder if they replaced the water with fire.
Well, so here's what it was. So because this is where the final breaks are. So because like that's the old mill building. So this is like as you're coming into the final break run.
Right.
So there's this water feature. It was supposed to be kind of like a mini splashdown where like have like these splash features, almost like. Kind of in homage to Buzzsaw Falls, kind of like as in memory of Buzzsaw Falls.
I'm glad that they didn't do that.
Well, and here's what's interesting: you can actually see remnants of this. So as you're coming down the drop off of the lift hill, you see this.
Yeah, it's like a little box.
Yeah, there's like a concrete. Like trough to the right side. I guess there used to be one to the left side too, but they got rid of that. But for some reason, this one is still there. I don't know why.
Let's leave it there.
But
we might add splash feature to the
maybe someday. But I've been told that's where the splashdown was supposed to happen.
And honestly, like I'm kind of glad that they didn't do a splash feature. I love water rides, but if I'm gonna get wet, I want to get soaked. And if I'm gonna, I don't like getting.
Well, that's kind of funny because Fire in the Hole is the same way. Fire in the Hole has like a mini splashdown section on the
and
last drop.
Sometimes you get wet, sometimes you don't, and like when I get wet, I just feel gross the rest of the time, and so I'd rather make up my mind like, hey, you're gonna go on a water ride, like.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The reason they didn't add it is because during construction they found that Powder Keg is extremely sensitive to any kind of precipitation. Which is true.
It's true because it's like one of the first rides to shut down even if there's a chance.
Absolutely. If you're ever at Powder Keg or if you're ever at Silver Dollar City and it starts to rain, Powder Keg is definitely the first coaster that will close. So so it makes total sense why they would get rid of that because, it's definitely, and I don't know if it's because the ride gets too fast when it's wet. I'm not sure what about it is sensitive, but definitely they have issues with it when it's wet. So, last thing I want to talk about, I can't find confirmation of this either, but I did say we're going to talk about the barn swing. Now, so the barn swing was built in. So they announced.
It's your favorite ride, right?
Oh, I do not like the barn swing. For some of you might like the S&S Screamin' Swings. That they're a dime a dozen at this point. So there's one at Kennywood. Yep. They just opened one down in I think it's SeaWorld San Antonio. They just opened the biggest one in the world, and I don't know. There's a lot of them nowadays, but they have one at Dollywood now, which opened after the giant barn swing, but. I remember when they opened it, like it was a huge addition to the park. Like obviously it was the biggest thing they'd done since Powder Keg. It's built by the same company that built Powder Keg though.
Really?
Which if you notice, if you go on Powder Keg, it has the same seats. Like they're identical. The restraints, like even has the little.
You're saying that?
Like if you look back at the headrest, it has the little S&S logo, just the same.
Weird.
Yeah, so they are identical, which is weird because. No other roller coaster has the seat restraints that the Screamin' Swings have, so I don't know why Powder Keg does. I don't know.
Hey, I'm fine with the restraints. Yeah. I'm a restraint snob.
That's fine. That's
snob.
something someone in the enthusiast community would say. That's not really a GP thing.
I don't know. I just if my head gets like banged around, I don't like it.
She would not enjoy a Vekoma SLC. She has no idea what that is, but she.
Idea what it is.
those of you that are enthusiasts will know that she has the worst restraint out there. So, well, maybe not the worst, but one of them.
Right. Well, I mean, even like when we went to Hershey Park, like there's that one ride. I think it's Great Bear.
No, you didn't ride Great Bear.
That's what I'm saying. Is I didn't go on Great Bear
because you were worried about those because they're the same restraints that Wildfire has.
I'm a restraint snob. I like the Powder Keg restraints. I feel like I'm able to enjoy the ride without getting a headache. So
yeah, well, Outlaw Run is nice too because it doesn't have over the shoulder restraints. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, so S&S built the giant barn swing, and they built it in 2007, which was 2 years after Powder Keg opened. I know it's common for parks to buy rides in like bundles for discounts. In fact, there's a rumor right now. So we went to Hershey Park for the first time last year. There's a rumor.
Well,
that,
you did.
That's true. You had been before.
Yeah.
There's a rumor that Hershey Park bought Candemonium in a bundle with another ride. That hasn't been confirmed, but a lot of people think a dive coaster built by B&M is coming to Hershey Park next. So, which would be fun. I would enjoy that. So, but like I said, it hasn't been confirmed. But it is common for parks to buy rides in bundles for discounts. And I've always wondered why Silver City didn't have Premier Rides come in and fix Buzzsaw Falls, which they're the ones that originally built it. And they're really good at launch coasters. So I was like, well, why didn't they just have Premier Rides turn into a launch coaster? The first obvious answer is maybe they were mad at them and didn't want to keep working with them because Buzzsaw Falls had all these issues. But then I thought about it. I was like, well, maybe S&S gave them a good deal if they bought Powder Keg and a Scream and Swing. And that's why they built them back to back. And maybe they got some kind of... So maybe they bought Powder Keg and the Barn Swing in some kind of bundle.
All right, STC, there's your next question.
There's my next question. Did you buy Powder Keg in the
bundle? All right, you've got 2 questions to answer here. So
I know you're listening, Silver City.
I know. Next time we go, we need to track down these managers.
Like, hey, I got this podcast.
Answer these questions for us, Silver Dollar City, or else we're never coming back. So. Just kidding. We love Silver Dollar City too much to not come back. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. Last thing, Powder Keg. Since Powder Keg was constructed, S&S really hasn't built anything else like it. So Hypersonic Xlc, which we talked about earlier at King's Dominion, closed in 2007. So a couple years later, it had major mechanical issues, and the maintenance costs were through the roof. And so the park just had to get rid of it, even though people loved it.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of glad that Powder Keg didn't end up being as intense as that ride was, because it may have ended up getting, the same kind of issues. Right. So Powder Keg has definitely stood the test of time because it's not as intense, I think. Then again, Dodonpa, which is the second ride that S&S did.
The one in Japan.
The one that's in Japan that breaks your back, yeah. That one's still open today. So, I don't know. Hypersonic Xlc was the prototype, so I don't know if maybe that's the reason that one had issues. But the only thing that S&S has built relatively similar to Powder Keg since is this is Max Force, which is at Six Flags Great America. It's kind of in the Chicago area.
Okay.
So this one opened just a couple years ago in 2019. And it's currently...
it's pretty new.
Yeah, so it's a pretty new one. And this one is the fastest accelerating coaster in North America. So it's not as fast as...
That inversion is crazy.
Isn't that crazy? It's the ride has 2 inversions on it that are completely unique to it.
I mean, that does look unique. It's very swooping fixture kind of thing.
Yeah, so. It's definitely a bucket list coaster.
Of course it is. But Nathan, everything is on your bucket list. Well,
that's true. Everything is on my bucket list. Everything that I haven't rode. So, last thing is just since Powder Keg's opening, obviously Outlaw Run and Time Traveler have become the star attractions of the park.
Which is funny because Outlaw Run, I mean, every time I feel like we've gone, the wait's like 5 minutes.
Right, and what's the wait for Powder Keg?
Like 2 hours.
I wouldn't say every time, but definitely 45 minutes at the most, or at the least.
That's the one ride that we definitely every time we go. Is it worth it to buy the
Trailblazer pass? Because usually we get to the park and we do Time Traveler first.
Right.
Get that one out of the way because by the middle of the day, it's going to have a 90-minute wait usually.
Right.
So we're like, let's do Time Traveler, and then everything else, all the rest of the coasters usually are walk-ons. Even Outlaw Run, which is crazy.
We're pretty good about keeping an eye on the app, on the map, and seeing the wait times there and things like that. But again, with Powder Keg, it takes so long. And honestly, I don't know if this is true or not, but they always seem to only have one train running.
Yeah, I have noticed that. And I know they have at least 2 trains. I don't think they have... They probably have 2 trains. I don't think they have 3.
There's your homework, Nathan, is figure out...
Does Powder Keg
how many trains does Powder Keg have?
I'm pretty sure it only has 2. But they really, pretty much 90% of the time I've gone, it's only been running one train.
And so it always takes a while.
Which is something, this is kind of a Silver Dollar City thing, and I don't know, I don't blame the park for this because I know it's less expensive and less, labor to run one train at a time. Right. But when I went to Knott's Berry Farm, last month.
Right, you told me about this.
Everything except for Accelerator was running multiple trains.
That's crazy.
And the park was dead. It was dead, and they were still running tons. An Accelerator really doesn't need multiple trains.
Short-staffed. I mean, area is so isolated. Like Branson's pretty an isolated spot. For the performers, and the people that work at the restaurants and things like that. There's really not that many people.
It's true. There's really only 10 to 15,000 people that live in Branson, and a lot of them are performers.
Branson's the tiny town that's a city.
It's true.
It's a weird place.
There's definitely more people that visit Branson than live in Branson.
It's definitely a weird spot.
And Knott's Berry Farm would not have that problem. Knott's Berry Farm is, in the LA area, so there's tons of people there. So maybe that's why. I don't know. But yeah, we can usually get on all the coasters in Silver Dollar City with relatively low wait times, but Powder Keg is the one that makes us think, maybe we should get the Trailblazer Pass today.
I mean, like we said, it is one of, our favorite rides, and so that's always the reason why we're should we get the Trailblazer? So. Yeah.
The last thing I will say before we close, the night ride on Powder Keg. Oh my gosh, it's so much fun.
Incredible.
The only part of the track that they light up is the launch track.
Yeah.
And so
riding this in pitch black. It's insane.
It's a lot of fun. The Outlaw Run, I think, is still the best night ride at Silver Dollar City because that one is literally pitch black. You could close your eyes and you could see better.
Right.
But Wildfire, they light up a little bit. Time Traveler, they light up. I haven't done Thunderation at night. I bet that one's...
we did.
It was dusk, so it was still a little light. But I bet Thunderation's probably pitch black too, pretty much. Except it's right next to Time Traveler, which is lit up. So I don't know. So
you're not gonna tell the story of your Powder Keg shirt.
Oh, I guess I'll tell that story.
Come on.
So
that's a story you need to share.
Okay, so I'll end with this story of my Powder Keg shirt. So we've been going to Silver Dollar City for a long time, and there's not a gift shop over by Powder Keg.
Which is interesting because I feel like Time Traveler, Outlaw Run, Wildfire, they all have their own gift shop.
Yeah, I think what it is I think starting in 2001, I think Silver Dollar City figured out the Disney method, which is to make you exit through the gift shop. Mm-hmm. Which, since Buzzsaw Falls was built in 99, that's why Powder Keg doesn't make you do that. But Wildfire, Outlaw Run, and Time Traveler make you walk through a gift shop as you're exiting the ride, which, that's the Disney method. So,
it's smart.
Yeah, it is smart. It's brilliant. So, Powder Keg doesn't have a gift shop. There is a gift shop at the bottom of the hill, but it's not a Powder Keg gift shop. It's just a generic gift shop.
Yeah.
So I thought that Silver Dollar City didn't have any Powder Keg merch, but it's my favorite ride at the park. So Haley made me a Powder Keg shirt, and
we'll have to post pictures of it on your Twitter page. It is not trademarked. We have nothing to do with the ride.
We're not gonna sell it.
We're not gonna sell it
because we shouldn't. We're not allowed to.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it is a really awesome shirt. If I say so myself.
It's simple, but it's a fun shirt. Yeah. And I've even had the ride ops when we're in we try to sit front row when we go on Powder Keg. And I've had Red Ops comment on it, oh, I love your shirt, and so...
Yeah, I feel like they've almost gotten to, recognize you now, because you're the only person that wears it, so... Yeah.
Well, where the story gets interesting is, the one time we got on and got in the front row, and they said that they liked my shirt, and I was like, yeah, we had to make one, because, there's no shirts at the park, and... the ride op told me, actually, there's one shirt, and it's at the gift shop at the bottom of the hill. And we're like,
really?
Oh, so we go down there, and sure enough, they have one Powder Keg shirt.
One shirt
that's down in that gift shop. So, but anyway,
it's not as cool.
It's not as
cool.
Yeah,
I mean, it's I don't know.
it was a little much for me. I prefer more
like
subtle t-shirts and more simplistic.
So
and that one
basically, it's just the logo. So it says Powder Keg, and then Nathan designed like part of like the ride.
Yeah, I took like one of the Airtime hills and like turned it into like a two-dimensional, like a shadow, so that you could cut it out and put it on the shirt.
Because I used my Cricut machine.
So
gotta love my Cricut machine.
But yeah.
Anyways, the moral of the story.
Yeah, the moral of the story is there is a Powder Keg shirt at the park if you need one. Because we're not getting the
best part. What?
Oh, that's right. There was one time we were walking through the park and this group of teenage boys saw my shirt and one of them just yelled out, "Powder Keg shirt!" And like
that's it. That's all he said.
And then he
like,
just
Powder Keg shirt, and
he was so excited about it. And we're like, "Oh, okay." So that's like an inside joke between us now.
Every time we get on Powder Keg, we always
Powder Keg shirt.
Powder Keg shirt.
So, but I guess other people were looking for one and couldn't find it because it's hidden away in that gift shop.
True. I feel like every time we go now and you wear that shirt,
I definitely get comments on it because I don't know. It's definitely it's definitely a dark horse at the park. Like people always go to Silver Dollar City for Time Traveler and Outlaw Run, and then they get on Powder Keg and they're like, "Oh, like that was a lot more fun than why haven't I heard about this ride?" So, but yeah. So that is the story of Buzzsaw Falls and Powder Keg. One other thing I'll tell you is I did talk with one of the the designer of Powder Keg, or not Powder Keg, the designer of Buzzsaw Falls.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, the company is RC Stengel, and the problem is they weren't very helpful.
Oh.
So,
okay.
Maybe they will be. Basically, I sent them an email asking them some questions, and they said they would look into it, and they got back to me, and all of their answers were, "We don't know." Like, instead of just saying "we don't know," they literally, under each question, just said, "We don't know. We don't know. We don't know."
Okay.
They said it was built in 98, and so, like, we don't know the answers. The only answer that they did have is I asked them if they had worked on any other projects similar, and Premier Rides did build one other liquid coaster besides Buzzsaw Falls, and I guess RC Stengel helped with that too. But then I asked them if, like, well, was there anything from Buzzsaw Falls that went wrong that you used to improve on your next design? And they said, "We don't know." So I was like, well, this isn't very helpful.
Great.
So, well, thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening to this first episode of Airtime Traveler. We hope you enjoyed it and hope we can continue to do more. I think our next episode, I'm going to do something from Hershey Park. I haven't decided what yet, but
I'm down.
Yeah, so we're going to try to do coasters that we've actually been on so that we can kind of add more commentary to what we think of the coaster and what we think of the park and in general. So we'll be visiting King's Dominion and Kings Island for the first time next month, so we'll be able to
talk about... Just a couple
about...
weeks, honestly.
It is true. I guess it's about a month now until we go to King's Dominion.
So start our countdown.
Yeah, so that'll be exciting. So after that, we'll be able to talk about some of the coasters there, and it'll be exciting. So
I'm excited.
So go ahead and follow us on Twitter. Our handle is just @Airtime Traveler. Super simple, all one word. And we're also on Instagram. You can follow us there.
Yeah, and seriously, leave any comments too on things that you might have questions on or you want to see in future podcasts. I think, as your co-host and general public, that's something that I like doing is I like commenting on everything on social media.
Yeah.
So.
And if we got anything wrong, or if you know someone that might be able to give us some more information on anything, feel free to let us know. So
tag Silver Dollar City.
Yeah, tag Silver Dollar City because
they need to answer those questions.
Yeah, because they didn't answer any of my messages, so I'm not bitter. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for listening to Airtime Traveler, and we'll see you in the next episode.